The Buffalo Bills defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in preseason game number 3. And in the process, they came to life and became a team. We're talking about it today on the Ralph Rant. Let's go.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant, your source for hard-hitting Buffalo Bills takes. Now, here's your host of the Ralph Rant, that veteran watcher of generations of Bills teams, the prophet who predicted Josh Allen's greatness, that opinionated so-and-so you walked out on parties because of, the Ralph.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant. I am your host, the Ralph. Thank you ever so much for being here today. We are discussing the Buffalo Bills' victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa last evening. And there's a lot to discuss with the game, a lot of takes. I believe the Bills really came to life in this contest. But before we get into it, thank you to all of the new subscribers and the new viewers the channel has. Very, very much appreciate it. And if you are new here to the Ralph Rant, I urge you with a gentle nudge or maybe a push like Deone Walker driving the Bucs center 3 yards into the backfield on one occasion, to go ahead and smash that like button and hit subscribe to get this content all season long. But let's get into it right now, and I'm going to go over what I'm going to discuss in my coverage of this game. We're going to start out with a title I call Frank Gore the Example. And it's going to be about Frank Gore, but it is also about a quality of young players that cannot really be measured and we can only discover during games. Then we will move on to Deone Walker, the game wrecker. I have railed about a game wrecker since I started this podcast back in April or whenever it was. Deone Walker is a beast, and he's doing it naturally. So this is not something where he's been in the practice squad for 3 years or whatever else. He is a beast, and we're going to talk about some other things on the defensive line as well. Then, was there ever any doubt? Cole Bishop, was there any ever doubt? Because Sean McDermott is the safety whisperer. And 3 years ago, we heard the very same language he used about Cole Bishop earlier this week about Terrell Bernard, who missed an entire preseason, but came on awesomely when the season got going. So that's the story here, that Sean McDermott is able to do this, and everything he says is on purpose. There are no accidental things, and I believe he got into Cole Bishop's ear like no one else can. Then we're going to talk about the receiver room roll call. Obviously, everyone is screaming for Tyrell Shavers to be a part of that receiver room. He has demonstrated it last night. He not only caught a one-handed touchdown, got a knee down, so the score was good, but on the ensuing kickoff, because someone lost contain, and we'll talk about that in the receiver room also, but he made that play. So we're going to talk about the receiver room in general, but Tyrell Shavers certainly. And then finally, I'm going to talk about McDermott the Manipulator, because there was a lot of concern over the Bills' performance at the Bears last week. And a lot of panic actually was ensuing. I told everyone not to panic on the quick vid that I made from somewhere deep in the Great Lakes when I ran away from the television set. Yes, I did it too. But McDermott is the manipulator, and I think I see what happened between last week and this week, and I even have more comments on what occurred in that Chicago situation. But let's get into it all now. We've got a lot to cover, so let's hit the horn and go. All right, let's jump into it here, and we're going to talk first about Frank Gore Jr. as an example. Now, Frank Gore has been a camp darling, a preseason star for the Bills now for 2 seasons in a row. He runs so very well. He gets free. He gets yards. He can catch the ball. He had a big catch and run last night. He had many runs where he made it through small windows and made himself small and anticipated and got yards when they were needed and big yards when they counted. And how is it that Frank Gore is able to do this so effectively when he's got such a poor RAS score, when he's really too small to be a bell cow back in the NFL? He's not really fast enough. The agility scores aren't great, of course, from the RAS. But yet he can see what's going on and is able to succeed. It's because it's the one quantity that teams cannot really measure. You can't measure it watching college film because most NFL players are playing against lesser competition in college. So you can't measure it there. You can't measure it at the combine. Everything that's measured at the combine in terms of athletic ability are all hard numbers. 40 time, agility score, the 3-cone score. All of these drills where you have a hard measurement and that is the time and that's the time. There's no changing it. They're very, very hard measurements. But what cannot be measured is anticipation. And Frank Gore demonstrates the ability to anticipate where he can go to lengthen a run, and he seems to be able to do that so quickly that his athletic deficiencies don't seem to get in the way. Now, of course, maybe that's different per Sunday versus the Ravens ones, but Frank Gore definitely demonstrates that. And you could take this a little further. I love to use the example of a cornerback. You've got a fast cornerback and a little slower cornerback. And of course, if you're selecting what cornerback you want to use, and one's a little faster than the other, let's say they both have good ball skills, they could both tackle. There's nothing really where boxes aren't checked on one side or the other, with the exception that the one cornerback is slower than the other. But that slower cornerback gets into the league and he becomes a starter, and the faster cornerback washes out. How can that possibly be? Well, it's really quite simple. It's the anticipation. Because if a guy's slower by 0.2 of a second, but he recognizes what's going on 0.4 of a second faster than perhaps the guy who runs 0.3 of a second faster than him, he's going to make the play, and that's why it happens. So it is the anticipation, and you see this in a lot of Bills players, and I think the Bills recognize this with their youngsters on the team and understanding that the anticipation factor is as much a factor in how well a player will do in the NFL as anything with hard measurables like RAS scores and 40 times and so forth. And of course, that's demonstrated with some other players also that just seem to be able to be in the right place at the right time. Jimmy Charlo, linebacker that came in with the Bills just a week ago, who showed very well in the very first game he played with Chicago. McDermott calls him out in the team meeting on Hard Knocks. He's congratulated and told he's going to get more playing time. Then last night, he makes tackles, he recovers a fumble, he is fast and moves very well and gets to the play. Does he have a really high RAS score? I don't even know what it is. Did he measure very high in the combine? Probably not. He was an undrafted free agent, I believe, with the Jets last season, tore his ACL in the very first game. Guys, there is no accounting for measurement of what makes a football player. And there are fast guys, there are big guys, there are strong guys, there are nasty guys, there are all sorts of guys, and then there are football players. And I think that's what the Buffalo Bills have aplenty on their team. As much as people jump on Brandon Beane for screwing up early draft picks or whatever else it may be, he's number one in my book, because he is finding players like this. And we're going to talk about some more of them coming right up now. Stick with me. Almost 2 months ago, I put out a video about the arrival of Bills senior defensive assistant Ryan Nielsen. Ryan Nielsen is essentially working with the defensive line. And the idea is that, of course, Brandon Beane had his meltdown, as I speculated in my reporting on that video I'm speaking of, where even before the Super Bowl was played, he decided he was going to get the defense right. It was obvious what the problem was. Bills' offense is fine. Their defense can't get a stop in the big moment. And in order to get stops in big moments, like the Chiefs seem to be able to do, you need game wreckers, at least one. The Chiefs have theirs, Chris Jones, definitely their game wrecker. It's not a question about it, and he makes the other guys around him better. The Bills have not had that until now. And Deone Walker, as I predicted, is a beast. He is a game wrecker. Now, he is certainly going to develop further. Strength and conditioning coach Will Greenberg certainly has worked with him already to help that lower back problem. Doesn't seem like it's a problem now. And, of course, they'll keep on working with him to get his body into the perfect NFL form. But, guys, I mean, did you see this man just throw people around? This is just this is just what he does. It's a natural thing. And you can see him pursue. And, yeah, he gets blown up a couple of times on taking off his spot on blocks. These are technique things. He's going to get that. What we're looking for is the natural ability to pursue and tackle the thrower of the football. And demonstrated that last night, got in on a sack, was extremely disruptive. I can't wait to see what happens with this going on. And certainly when you start getting these lines together and getting people working together, when you've got a Joey Bosa and a Deone Walker and a Ed Oliver perhaps, and then Landon Jackson on the other end, we're talking about having some situations where it's going to even be worse than we saw last night, because it's known that great players, when they come in to a defense or offense, they can make the other people around them better. But I said this on a previous video, and it holds true that if you've got a young player who's got a lot of promise and talent, that will explode when you get him out on the field with other competent NFL starters. And I can't wait to see how that is going to look. Other items on the defensive line, I mean, we've got to be overall happy with how the run was stopped last evening. There were a couple of escapes made by the back, number 37, Morris may be his last name, who is actually doing pretty well for the Buccaneers. But for the most part, there was a lot of situations where Bills defenders were in the backfield, and Deone Walker, for one, had his way with the offensive line, whatever offensive lineman was across from him. And the one thing that's so remarkable, we know he's a big guy, but when you're watching on broadcast, of course, we know there are certain big guys and smaller guys, and yeah, that guy seems a little larger perhaps, but sometimes they really don't when you're looking at it on the broadcast footage. Not Deone Walker. I mean, this is a scale up. This is a scale up of a human, and I believe he's going to be devastating. And if you did not watch that defensive video about Ryan Nielsen, where I said the Bills defense would be rated R, go back and watch it, because I'll reiterate the prediction here now. By week 11, the Buffalo Bills defense will be drawing comparisons to that of the '85 Bears, and especially in terms of their ability to attack up front. Now, we also saw TJ Sanders. TJ did not seem to have quite the game. He was effective. He's using a lot of hand violence, but he did not seem to be actually just moving people out of the way like Deone Walker did. But what you are seeing are people working together. Landon Jackson also. All of these rush components are going to help if guys are actually moving people and getting in. Yes, Landon Jackson still needs to get his game together and figure out what his rush plan is going to be. But the tools are there. The tools are there across the entire line. And, of course, Michael Hoyt just is going to be a real quantity when we get him back in Week 8. And, again, I've stressed this before. I know the suspensions to Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt hurt. But I'll tell you what, their absence is going to create minutes on the field for the likes of TJ Sanders, Deone Walker, Landon Jackson, and we are going to see those guys improve with those minutes, because we know the Bills know how to coach, and we see the effects of great minutes on the field in improving these guys. So I stick with that prediction, and yes, we got our game wrecker, baby. We've got our game wrecker. Let's move on. There may be in the very remotest corners of Bills country fans who do not know the term safety whisperer. Everywhere else, it is well known that Sean McDermott is the safety whisperer. He has developed his entire career on secondary play. He's an expert at it. It's been demonstrated. The play of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer as a pair for the Bills over the past few seasons, not last season, indeed, that will go down as being legendary. But the safety whisperer doesn't just whisper, it turns out, because quite out loud, he called out safety Cole Bishop last week after the Chicago fiasco. And he indicated that Cole needed to get more reps. He needed to be on the field. The availability component was very important because there's a lot to learn. McDermott's secondary is complex. This is why we see guys struggle at first. It is not a man-covered situation where it's, you just follow this guy. It is quite complex. So we know that McDermott is not just a whisperer because we heard him 3 years ago in the very same situation with Terrell Bernard when Bernard missed the entire preseason. And we were looking for him to replace Tremaine Edmonds. And almost with the exact same wording, Sean McDermott calls him out in a press conference stating that he does need to get it together. He needs to be out on the field. There's a lot to learn, and he's got to progress. And that wasn't by accident either. Well, we saw the result because last night, Cole Bishop looked like a different ball player altogether. And that was evident right from the very start. He was on a little bit of a pitch count again, of course, because he just got to practice last week. But there was some definite intention going on there. He was hitting people. He was unloading on guys heavily. He was triggering quickly. He made tackles and just looked aggressive. And of course, as we heard Bobby Babich indicate earlier in the week on his press conference, that the notion of a deep safety and strong safety is not really existent any longer in the league largely, and certainly not with the Bills. They really want both safeties to be able to do both things, although one might be a bit better in an area than the other. But Cole Bishop's athletic ability showed up big time in this game last night. And I have to believe that the psychology imposed by Sean McDermott, whatever way he works it, it is extremely effective because he wants the guys to have that confidence to go out and play. You cannot be thinking about it. You cannot be thinking about it any more than a musician thinks about a scale when he's about to perform something, or a skater thinks about how fast to actually jump when they're doing a spin. It's all totally reactionary, and it's got to be based on a lot of reps where this stuff is just built into muscle memory. So I think we can say now that we can put down the fire alarms and go ahead and get the lifeboats tied back up because Cole Bishop is going to be fine. He's going to start next to Taylor Rapp. And again, as I said before, when you're talking about bringing a player without a great deal of experience into a situation where you've got a lot of experienced players, that's going to help him out a great deal. And we know Taylor Rapp is definitely the quarterback of the back end of that defense. And that's going to be a great help. Would we have liked to have seen Cole Bishop get more time with Taylor Rapp on the field? Of course. But I'm not worried about it. It's going to be all right because the next level of this is going to be faster. It's going to be harder, and Cole Bishop will do well out there having Taylor Rapp and the entire secondary with how it's coming together. Of course, the only question we have there now is this mystery injury to Trey White, and we'll find out the outcome of that. The Bills reported that an MRI was going to be done, and they didn't have the results yet. No, they already know. There is a little bit of gamesmanship going on here. We might see Dane Jackson actually starting in that spot in week 1. Dane Jackson's a good tackler, though, and still not sure that Zay Flowers is going to be on the field for Baltimore or not, but a cornerback that can tackle is going to be a great thing against the Baltimore Ravens. So let's go ahead, put the padlock on the fear bunker. Cole Bishop is going to be fine. Let's move ahead. Now, my personal favorite part of the game last night, Deone Walker pushing a lineman 3 yards into the backfield into the quarterback. But that's a personal favorite. The obvious fan favorite last night was, of course, Tyrell Shavers and his left-handed, one-handed grab coming down and getting his knee down in bounds for the score. The throw was originally called incomplete because the ref saw him out of bounds. It was reviewed. They awarded the touchdown. The Bills sideline erupts. This is such a team. They erupt in celebration for Shavers. And then, if he hadn't made the team then, on the very next play, the kickoff, Laviska Shenault loses contain, and the returner for the Buccaneers is coming up the right side of the field, and Tyrell Shavers comes across the field, knocking him out of bounds. This is, I'm not going to call him Mac Hollins 2.0 because I think he is a different animal even than Mac Hollins. And I think he is making this team, obviously. But I want to talk about the rest of the receiver room also in sort of a roll call. Now, we know that the top three receivers, and McDermott mentioned this himself in the press conference. We know our first three. Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, certainly. Who are the next three? And, of course, it's been presumed that the Bills really like Curtis Samuel. It's been presumed that they liked Elijah Moore, bringing him in. Good pedigree, playing with bad quarterbacks. And, of course, there's KJ Hamler, who has done well in various preseasons. And we don't know if the Bills are going to keep 5 or 6 receivers. Of course, other position groups will move the needle on that. But I believe, of course, the 3 we mentioned will be there. And I don't know who the other 3 will be, but I believe 2 of them will be Tyrell Shavers and Christian Wilkerson. Wilkerson he's not been quiet, but he hasn't been the headline name because there has been quite a bit about Tyrell Shavers. But Wilkerson has made some great catches along the sideline. He did again last night. You watch his blocking, and I watched his blocking closely on a couple of plays. There was a running play where he is coming from the slot. He's got his assignment. He is supposed to drive the guy across, so he's coming across the running lane, and he'll drive the man across the lane so the back can go behind him. Well, he wasn't able to actually get the guy turned, so he turns and is basically pushing that defender upfield with a running back right next to him, if it was either Young or Frank Gore Jr. in that particular case. But certainly, he's got the blocking skills. I believe he's a teams guy, definitely. And I think Christian Wilkerson, to me, reminds me of another Bills receiver that we had during the drought, but was a great quantity for us on so many occasions, and that's Robert Woods. I believe he projects as Robert Woods, and I believe Christian Wilkerson is going to make this roster. If you watched Hard Knocks and you listened to Sean McDermott, and again, we've already established that McDermott doesn't say a single thing that isn't precisely crafted for a purpose. And when he talks about, I don't care where you're from, where you were drafted, what size you are, how fast you were, it is how you perform out on the field. And we just haven't seen as much from Elijah Moore. We'd like to think it's a great situation, but Tyrell Shavers, he's a burner. He's got to be one of those remaining 3 spots. Christian Wilkerson, certainly. And then as far as that other spot, if there is a 6th, who are we talking about? Curtis Samuel, perhaps. KJ Hamler, Mr. Scooter, not so sure. I think a lot of this depends on how the Bills feel about Curtis Samuel. He does have a sticky contract, makes it tougher to put him to pasture here at cut down, but we'll see what happens. But I am betting on Tyrell Shavers and Christian Wilkerson being part of the 53-man roster. Now, I'm certain that many of you are familiar with the movie Hoosiers, starring Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman is a college basketball coach who was very successful, but ended up striking one of his players and is thrown out of the college basketball ranks. He ends up going to the Navy for 10 years, and then at the start of the movie, we find him driving to tiny Hickory, Indiana, where he is to become the basketball coach of the high school. And as we get into the movie, we see he goes and visits with one of the teachers at her home, and the teacher's mother is there, and the mother is a huge basketball fan, and asks the coach, well, what do you think of the team this year? And coach replies, well, there's quite a bit of talent. And then she asks, well, you think you can get him going? And Hackman replies, well, first I need to break him down, and then I can build him back up. And that's coaching manipulation. Perhaps the best manipulator in the history of any coaching of any sport would be Vince Lombardi and what he was able to do with the Green Bay Packers. Master manipulator, knew how to work with individual players, knew how to work with a team, actually knew the right buttons to press. I believe head coach Sean McDermott possesses many of these same qualities. Certainly, there is nothing he says in a press conference or in a meeting room that is not extremely intentional. Nothing is stated by mistake. Nothing is stated offhandedly. Nothing is an accident. And we've heard this, of course, when he's talking about Cole Bishop or Terrell Bernard a few years ago, as we referred to earlier. We've heard him discussing it with various players and even with various portions of the team. And I think the master manipulator was hard at work last week and this week. Because why did we see such a dramatic difference in the Buffalo Bills between the Chicago and Tampa Bay preseason games? Now, there are a couple of obvious reasons for that we can get out of the way. First of all, in Chicago, Coach Ben Johnson, offensive guru, working with the number one draft pick from last year's draft in Caleb Williams, and frankly, having another NFL starting level quarterback, Tyson Bagent, on the squad. So the Bills were facing really two starting caliber quarterbacks in the Bears. But I think there was more to it than that. Again, McDermott says nothing by accident. So when he talks about the fact that he and Ben Johnson have had an interesting history together, they met up when they were jogging at one point, I think on some occasion, and you know they're talking, and you know they're discussing their teams, and you know McDermott, of course, is sharing a few things with Ben Johnson about McDermott having come in early and becoming a head coach for the first time. So there's conversation going on there. And certainly Ben Johnson wanted to get the Chicago Bears playing very well. He wants to kickstart this operation because he needs to get them out of the thought of losing and get them into the mindset of winning. Now, I don't think many people will believe me, but I believe wholeheartedly that Sean McDermott and Ben Johnson talked. They had to have talked during the period of the practices with the two teams together in Chicago, and then certainly before the game, whatever. I believe if it even was a hint, it was to say that, Ben Johnson, go ahead, run your offense hard. We know that Chicago had a little bit of game planning going on. And why not? They're trying to get it kickstarted, like I said. Like I said in the video I did last week, I believe Sean McDermott threw his defense, and especially the secondary, to the wolves against Chicago, telling Chicago to go ahead and, hey, throw on them. Let's do all sorts of stuff. I want to get a bunch of film on my squad making mistakes. And whether McDermott actually said that or not, that is certainly what he got. And it gave him the ability to go into that film study with the team and break down some people, crush some people. What are you doing here? What are you thinking there? Breaking them down. But then building them back up, telling them that the energy needs to be there. When we've got the coordinators telling their staffs, coach right to the end of the tape. We're looking for things like players helping others up off the ground. We're looking for the congratulations. We're looking for the energy. Now, maybe you thought they knew what they were talking about, or maybe you thought they didn't know what they were talking about whilst watching Hard Knocks. I'm here to tell you they knew what they were talking about. That was an inspired team last night. And I believe, as I said in my intro, that I think the team really became a team last night. The energy was there, the excitement was there, and the camaraderie, everything that should culminate from all of the training camp, the team being away at St. John Fisher, coming back, having played a couple of games now, you saw it come together. And it was with very, very few starters. So that was great to see. I believe Sean McDermott is one of the top head coaches in the league. And again, the Bills are going to go win the Super Bowl this year. Now we're just going to watch and see how it unfolds. A couple of other quick notes. Certainly, what have I got here? Chase Lunt can move. What else do I have here? Oh, yeah, this is the only other note that I did not cover, which is the following. Buccaneers head coach Todd Bowles, whenever something has gone wrong on the field, has a look on his face like he just consumed a bad oyster. I don't know if anybody's approached him about it, but if he watches the Ralph Rant, he'll know. But you are watching the Ralph Rant, and I want to thank you very much. I want to ask that you subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and stick with me for this entire season because it's going to rock and the Ralph Rant's going to rock. So that's it for today. I'm coming back with another video about this ridiculous Hawkeye system, which didn't even get employed last night. We saw the chains come out. I'll have that for you a little bit later this week. But until then, go Bills. This is the Ralph Rant. I am the Ralph. Be good. Out.